Hello, everyone, and welcome into Tunnel Vision, a show presented to you by USCFootball.com. I'm your host, Jack Smith, joined in studio by Ryan Abraham and Shotgun Spratling. That new intro, first of all, was pretty awesome. Make sure you guys are leaving your comments on the show as we're going to break down USC's matchup with Cal last night, where they won 41-35. You can leave your comments here in the chat wherever you're watching. We can put them up on the screen, or you can call in 512-4-TUNNEL to leave your thoughts as we discuss USC's win 41-35 over Cal. Guys, how's it going?
They're doing all right. We got Shotgun in studio, which was cool. Give Chris the night off, and, it's okay. But, yeah, we got Shotgun, which is always nice. We got a weird week practice on Monday and Tuesday this week because they got the Friday game against Colorado. No costumes this week on the show like we had last week. That went over well. You missed the costume show. I think you would have liked it.
I saw the costume show.
You might have liked it.
I think I texted in to correct something from the costume show.
Oh, you probably did, yeah.
I'm constantly editing these days.
What would you have worn?
I was a referee for Halloween.
Pac-12 ref, were you throwing a lot of flags?
I was not a Pac-12 ref because I didn't have enough hankies around.
You need a lot of flags.
You got to have a lot to be a Pac-12 ref. So, I didn't want to. I was in the Philadelphia area, so I was getting booed a lot. Just walking down the street. So
throwing batteries at you and stuff.
Much less if I was a Pac-12 ref. I think even the Philly fans know to attack the Pac-12 refs even a little bit harder. So. No, but it was fun. Fun Halloween, and glad to be in studio. I don't know if you guys know this or not. I know we're going to talk about this football thing. Basketball season starts tomorrow, Ryan.
Get
excited.
La.
Get excited.
I know. I talked to Dave Tuttle, the basketball SID in the press box yesterday. So basketball is starting up, but we're going to talk about football, USC at homecoming. Make sure you smash that like button and please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Smash it. Just hit it a whole bunch of times. Tell your friends. Share it. We need lots of likes on there, and it's great. We love having these live shows for you. Retweet it if you're on Twitter and all that kind of stuff. And if you do want to call in, you can do 514-TUNNEL. We will take some live calls this evening. Try to keep them brief if you can. Just quick question, not 10 questions. We don't need to hear a million things, but we'd love to talk about what you want to talk about. But let's try to keep it brief so we can keep the show moving. And if you're in the chat room, there's a whole bunch of people chatting on our YouTube channel. Put question up front, all caps. That'll help. And then Jack can kind of star that and go back and look at it later. So yeah, but we got to talk about homecoming, Jack. USC, they had the LAFC, the MLS Cup going on. I'm trying to get try to park, and it's crazy. There's just a million people around because they just won the MLS Cup, the LAFC. So it's kind of a crazy day around the Coliseum.
Yeah, I feel like for the LAFC fans, it's a win they can be happy about. For USC fans, it's a win. Not sure how good you can feel about the win. Shotgun and I talked about it on Instant Analysis yesterday. It's a win for the USC. They're 8-1, but still the defense, not a great performance. They couldn't pull away yet again from an inferior opponent. They only end up winning by 6 at home on homecoming. So I guess maybe that's where we start is, even though it's a win for the Trojans, how good do you think it should feel, and how good does it feel to you?
Yeah, I think the term I would use, and maybe USC fans could correct me, but I would say unsatisfying. You had a meal, you ate, you're full, but it was a lot of broccoli and ends of Brussels sprouts and stuff. You weren't really satisfied. You weren't it was this juicy burger or cutting a steak. You were like, I'm full, but with rice pilaf and some, it wasn't a satisfying win, especially knowing the way USC could have pulled away multiple times, and Lincoln Riley talked about that too. I mean, Jack and I were talking about this off air. Never felt that the game was in danger, even though for the second week in a row it came down to an onside kick. USC technically could have lost. If Cal gets that onside kick, they're probably winning that game. But I didn't feel that the result was going to be in danger. Maybe that's just me being naive, but it didn't feel satisfying. They scored 41 points, but giving up 35 to a really bad Cal offense. I've watched this Cal team a lot. They are not good on offense. Jack Plummer, he looked the most he ever throw this season, 278 yards against UNLV. That was his high. He throws for 406 against the USC defense. So most touchdowns he threw all year, 3. Highest completion percentage, 71 point whatever percent. Yeah, that's not good. So I would say unsatisfying. I don't know what you think.
I mean, it was bad defense. Made it for an interesting game at the end, but it wasn't even a tale of two halves. It was a tale of 3 quarters versus the fourth quarter because USC gave up 21 points in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
After giving up a touchdown on the opening drive where they just missed tackles, and then seemed to lock in, okay, let's get back in this. And they played good defense for the next 2.5 quarters, and then suddenly couldn't make a stop for anything. And they had opportunities. They had after the onside kick that Cal had, they had 3 third down attempts to get off the field. And one of those is, and granted, I think Cal's going to end up going for it on 4th down, but one of those is it's 3rd and 7. They just throw a little swing pass to Jaden Knott. It was kind of a little bubble screen to get him out in some space. And Mekhi Blackman and Shane Lee are both there, and they go shoulder pad to shoulder pad with him on both sides. Neither one of them goes for the legs. And then he turns and kind of twists and goes ahead for 3 more yards and picks up 1st down. That's just bad. That's bad tackling form. If you're a cornerback, you can't be going shoulder pad to shoulder pad. And if you're Shane Lee as the second defender coming in, you shouldn't be trying to go shoulder pad to shoulder pad, especially when you see someone is already at that same height. You got to go at a different height, take out the legs, especially of a running back like Jaden Knott. So there's areas that need to be improved, obviously, and tackling is one of them, but the technique was not there. It wasn't just that they were missing tackles, but you're not even aiming at the right point. At that, especially at that stage in the game where you need to be hitting people low to take them down. So that was really disappointing to see because they had missed the tackles the last 2 games, and I was interested to see how they would bounce back from that. And according to Pro Football Focus, they had 11 missed tackles on their initial review of the game after having 38 the previous 2 games, so a little bit better. And you could say at least 3 of those were on the opening drive. So for the rest of the game, they only had 8, which is not terrible. That's right in the zone you want to be at. That 6 to 10 range, and you feel good with that. But it's just they're in the impact moments they didn't make the plays, and that's disappointing because that's what this defense had done so much the first 5 games of the season is. When the plays needed to be made, hey, bend but don't break, bend but don't break, bend but don't break, interception. Or you get that stop, you force the 4th down, you force the field goal attempt, and they just didn't do that at the end of that game against Cal. And I don't know what the answer is there. And it seemed from Mekhi Blackman's response and from Alex Grinch's interview after the game, Mekhi Blackman, as I said on Instant, he was asked 2 questions in the primary post-game press conference and answered in 12 to 15 words.
He did not talk much.
2 sentences. That was it. And you tell the frustration there. And then Alex Grinch just talking about how frustrating it is for him as well. And Kalen Bullock used the word frustrating as well. So, they're in position, but there were a lot of tips. They didn't get any of those tips. They had chances to get off the field on 3rd down, didn't get off the field on 3rd down. So, it's in the combination. The pass rush isn't getting enough time to get there because when they're in their zone coverages, there's guys wide open. And then when they're in man coverage, they gave up the big strikes on the slot fades, on Sierra Wright getting the double move. There were a couple of big-time plays, vertical plays. And if you're giving up those and you're giving up the underneath stuff, then there's no answer at all. If you're Alex Grinch, you don't know what to call because you're not stopping either the over-the-top stuff or the stuff in front. And that makes it that much more difficult. And that also makes it that much more difficult in your pass rush to be able to try to get there because you can throw a fade really quickly. You can throw those quick hitches, the quick slants, that stuff against the zone coverages really quickly. Now, can you force them to run a 15-yard in because it's 3rd and 12? Hey, now the pass rush has a chance to go get somebody, and that's something that they weren't able to consistently do. When the pass rush had a little bit more time to get to the quarterback, they got there and at least force some errant throws and force some throws on the run and whatnot from Jack Plummer, which is obviously not what he's good at. And those were a couple of the ones that were just kind of up in the air, it seemed like for days.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, USC wasn't coming down with those either.
Yeah. I think those critical downs are important where when the stakes are raised and it's 3rd and 7, they pick it up or whatever. Or those kind of things. A lot of times you see it with a mobile quarterback. It's 3rd and long and the guy, the good coverage and then up the middle of the field's open. He runs. This was Jack Plummer like finding dudes and just keep converting on those down. I think there was about 50% third down conversion. Like, if you haven't seen Cal before, like, and you look at Cal, you're like, okay, that's a good offense. They are not. Like, you would watch their offensive line it'd be a sieve and just give up. And that's what I really liked about, like, with the second quarter and stuff. They were running downhill. I think Shane Lee started one drive with a tackle for loss. He shot through the line. Thule gets a sack after that. Like, they were playing downhill. I talked to Shane Lee after the game, like, playing downhill for a while. And it seemed like they backed off of it, where I don't think that was your best defensive strategy was bring some heat and just force crap to happen in the backfield. Like, make things happen. You're dropping Thule Pelotu back in coverage at times. Like, never do that. Like, don't do that again. Like, I don't know what you're doing there. But for me, this was like there was a winning formula that just get after Cal. Just get after Plummer. When you're getting some pressure in the backfield, yeah, you might miss. Maybe you get a PI in the backfield or whatever. But when you're playing like a soft zone and stuff, like that wasn't working. I just wanted to see them get after it. And when they did, for a while, it seemed like it was the time of the game they did, it worked. And then they sort of were playing a different strategy to me, and then it just wasn't working.
Yeah, I've got to rewatch the second half a little bit closer. I kind of speed watched it today to get another angle on it after being on the field. But early you can play more downhill when you're playing man coverage. Because you can attack, because then you don't have that easy throw right over the middle. But they're getting burned over the top. So when it gets late in the game, you have a lead, you're probably not going to want to do that because you don't want to give it that big explosive play. You want to at least make them earn it and go down the field. So maybe that played into it. I know in that 3rd and 7 I was mentioning with Jaden Ott, the high tackling, they brought a little bit of pressure on that one. That's why they try to get it out quick to Ott out in the flat. So, Grinch is mixing things up. It's not like he's doing one thing and one thing only. He does a good job of mixing and stuff like that. But they've got to be able to be really good at one or the other.
Yeah.
Like, find something you're going to be really good at. And right now, that's the problem, is they're kind of just wishy-washy. They look good at times on some things, and they look bad at times on the same thing. So they just don't have any consistency, and that's the one thing that Mekhi Blackman, his one sentence was, we have to be more consistent on defense.
Yeah.
So, that's the biggest thing going forward, and that starts with tackling. I think, if you tackle, you give yourself that much more of a chance because, hey, that 3rd and 7, if they hit him and tackle him at the spot, it's 4th and 3.
Yeah.
Now you make them make a play on 4th down. And, hey, if it's an errant ball or someone gets their fingertip on it, suddenly you get a turnover on downs. So it just changes the complexion when, he picks up that 1st down and now it's 1st and goal from the 2 or 3 yard line versus it being 4th and 3 from the 6. It can be a completely different change. And, hey, you get off the field there, suddenly the score doesn't look as close as this. You said you never felt like it was in danger. When they got to 3rd and 5, when USC got to 3rd and 5, I was like, they better pick this up or they're going to lose this game.
Yeah, but I trusted Caleb Williams to pick it up, and I wasn't.
With 2 downs.
Yeah, I just never felt that the game was in danger. But
that 2 downs is very dangerous, though. You can't necessarily go 4th down because it's a 6-point game. It's not like you have a 7-point, which I thought was a really interesting call by Cal to go for 2 in that point when they were down by 8. I mean, they go for 2 to get down by 6. Basically, that tells you that they felt like, and this is very similar to the Utah game when they went for 2. A little bit different situation as far as the score, going for the win versus getting closer. But that tells me that Cal was like, they're not going to stop us. We might as well just go ahead and get 2 points instead of 1. Whatever we're going to run right here is going to work. And that's a very disconcerting thing as a defensive coordinator, as a head coach, for the opposition with what you have called a very bad offense to just be like, yeah, we'll score this. We might as well go.
I think it's an analytics thing where you're going late in the game. You're like, go for 2 now, and then you have a chance. If you don't get it, then you could just score a touchdown. I mean, if you get it, you can score a touchdown and win. If you don't get it, then you could still go for it again and tie. But yeah, like, you miss twice, then you'd end up losing if you scored twice. But I guess it's just like an analytics thing.
It could also
Jack's
be
young. He knows this stuff.
It could also be that they got the extra point prior to that swatted down. So there could be some things that played into it. But also,
Nick Figueroa, by the way.
To me, it feels like, we're going to score. We might as well just go for it.
Yeah.
Which, if I was the USC offense at times, I would go for 2 more often. But when they're rolling, it's just like, nah, they're going to score.
Especially after they missed that extra point or botched the extra point. Man, that looked like a circus, by the way. That was Ringling Brothers stuff.
So,
then I thought they would go for 2 at some point. They never did. I'm like, wow, that's kind of weird. I thought maybe just right away afterwards. I got to go for 2 now.
So, again, I got to check everything, when I pay a lot more attention, when I do my participation charts and whatnot. But I believe Jack Casasante got injured on that play because I saw him with a big knee brace on later in the game. Maybe it was a different play that he got injured on. But I believe Nathan Wineta came in as the backup long snapper at one point in the game. So, that was interesting that, you have a backup in there as part of that operation. So if USC would have needed a field goal late, now suddenly the pressure gets on a little bit.
So, so Harvey Hyde, I did the show with him this morning, and he had mentioned that. I didn't realize there was a backup snapper going in there, but apparently, it was a bad snap from the original snapper. I used to know snapper stuff, but they're not on scholarship now, so I don't know who they are. So
Jack Casasante.
Props to you, Jack. Sorry, hope you're okay.
Yeah, I totally didn't notice that they brought a backup long snapper in. Ryan, you bring up a good point about the big plays where that seemed like where the USC defense halted. Going into the game, my key for Cal was they were converting third downs at a 35% rate coming in, and USC was at 55%. I mean, Cal needed to be high above 35% and keep USC far below 55%, and they ended up beating USC in third down conversion rate. They converted 53%, and USC only converted 41%. So, I mean, they pretty much did everything right on those big plays.
They did, and USC punted 5 times. That's probably a season high, right? Did they punt more at Oregon State? I'm not sure, but
no, I think that's a season high.
It's got to be a season high.
I can actually check real quick.
Which is, but you score 41 points. We're not going to complain about the offense, but to me, there wasn't a good complement between the offense and the defense. It was like the stops were sort of rare, but when the defense was playing well, when the defense was getting those stops, the offense was going 3 and out. And then, the one time it worked is when the defense got the interception before halftime. But the USC offense had a chance to do something, went 3 and out, had to punt, and then the defense gets the ball back. So that was complimentary. The defense picked up the offense's woes, and then the offense was able to score before halftime. But outside of that, it just a lot of the times we've seen these, the defense make a big play and the offense capitalize off it. It just seemed like they weren't. It wasn't the not that the defense and offense are communicating, but sometimes it kind of works in synergy. It just wasn't working that game.
It feels like the USC offense thrives on momentum.
Yeah.
So because of the way that they can push the ball down the field, they can attack you with a million paper cuts, the way they can do things in different ways, and the way that Lincoln Riley draws stuff up and he knows when to attack. He has a really good sense of, there's been a couple times this year where they've given up a touchdown immediately with a quick strike. You think back to Stanford, the Jordan Addison touchdown, where he wants to turn the momentum around. Sometimes that's to a fault. He'll take that deep pass, and then now you're in second and long, and things can build up on you that way. But I think he has a pretty good sense of it, of when to go for the play that you drew up for this week. That you designed based on certain defenses. Okay, this is the play that's going to work this week. And, whether it be that play to Tahj Washington that gets, I think it was 40-something yards on that drive right before half after the interception. He's holding on to 1 or 2 plays that are what he thinks are going to be big strike plays, and he knows to use them after a turnover, because that can really build the momentum, and it feels like the offense really thrives on it, and Lincoln knows when to call those type of plays. So it's been interesting. They've been so good, it seems like, when they get that turnover, because the offense is hyped, they're ready, they either run it down somebody's throat or they quick strike, and they just seem to be so much better even when they are coming off of a turnover versus they just receive the ball off a punt or a kickoff. So it's kind of just been something interesting to note there is how well they've done off turnovers and scoring off of them throughout the season and been pretty good at that. And your question about Aiden Sleep-Dalton, he punted 4 times against Oregon State. His career high for snaps coming into the game this weekend was 5, because he punted 5 times against Washington State.
Okay, so 5 more in this one. And one of the things I noticed, and Jack, you brought up the low third down percentage. It seemed like on some of those critical downs, I'm sitting next to RJ in the press box in Austin, and it's 3rd and 7 or something, and it was sort of like a fade to a receiver kind of running to the sideline. They would have to be perfectly. It wasn't like a stop right over the middle where you just kind of hit a guy that's in the soft spot of the zone or something. It seemed like there were these low percentage sort of sideline passes going away from you that everything would have to work for it to be successful, and they just weren't coming down with them. The play calling on some of those downs were weird too. Like sometimes you see like, wow, they schemed that really open. This seemed more of just like a lower percentage, something you're throwing, as a guy's like running from inside towards the sideline, and timing has to be perfect. So I don't know if you guys noticed that, but it seemed like they did a lot of that.
I mean, the deep ball to Kyle Ford, is the one you probably think of immediately with that is, hey, you're taking your one-on-one shot, and that was a 3rd and, I think, 7.
Yeah.
But the first 3rd down that they didn't convert was the stop route over the middle, and Caleb Williams threads the needle, and Terrell Bynum doesn't come down with a catch.
Yeah.
So it was a combination, I think.
There were some drops too on good good routes like that.
I believe Terrell Bynum had a 3rd down drop as well.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. The very first drive of the game. They tried to hit Raleek Brown a couple times in different ways and couldn't connect with him.
That was a weird one too. That looked like he's not used a lot in that role, like a downfield throw, like kind of going to the sideline.
It really felt a lot more this week versus last week that Caleb Williams was using the backup receivers. And I don't mean that they didn't make plays, because obviously Tahj Washington and Michael Jackson had huge plays and some nice catches from guys. But it felt like he's so in sync with Jordan Addison and Mario Williams, where it felt like a couple times, like the throw over the middle to Kyle Ford, there was one that was on a 3rd down. And after the play, he's like, using his hands and making a motion to Kyle Ford, where they're just not in sync enough on that play for both of them to be on the same page to go to the exact right spot. Because Caleb is so anticipatory with a lot of his throws when he stays in the pocket. Now, when he gets out and creates, it's a little bit different. But when he's throwing from the pocket, he's very anticipatory. He's looking, and he's throwing the ball before someone turns their head. And we saw that there was a play on the drive, the first touchdown drive they scored. Raleek Brown's in for that most of that series, and there was a quick out to Michael Jackson.
Right.
And the ball was just really nowhere near him. And after the play, you see them talking a little bit, but it seemed like there was a lot more conversation, Caleb and a receiver, after an incompletion than there has been, in the past. And I think that's just it became a factor of, hey, you're playing with a lot of guys that were on the second string, guys that you don't necessarily get a ton of reps with, the first half of the season, basically.
Yeah.
So, guys are making plays. I'm not saying that that's an issue, but I think that just the cohesion of the offense and how smooth that it is run in the past, when you have Addison, when you have Mario Williams, you didn't necessarily see that against Cal, and I think that hurt them, especially on 3rd down, because there were opportunities out there where they didn't make a play, and it felt like a couple of times where it was like, I don't know exactly what they were saying, but it felt like, hey, if you just went this way or you just went that way, that half second or whatever it may be on the pass, then suddenly that's a 1st down and the change of movement.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Caleb Williams, because we've mentioned it for, it seems like, the past couple of weeks now, that he seems to be getting better every week. I'm not sure this was his best performance of the year, just because, as Shotgun mentioned, he had to deal with some backup receivers, and you really felt it for the first time. But another game with 5 total touchdowns, that's 3 in a row that he's got 5 tutties on the day. I am amazed every week by what Caleb Williams can do, both in the pocket, out of the pocket, running the ball, throwing the ball, and he had another great performance.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at what he's been able to do, he's clearly, like, no doubt about it, the team MVP. He's, I don't know what the record would be. Lincoln Riley talked about how proud he was of 8-1. Without Caleb Williams, you are not 8-1, certainly. And you could argue what the record would be, but this would not be. It would not be that. And I think when there are screw-ups on special teams or screw-ups on the defensive side, or something's not working in the pass game, or you're out your 2 top receivers, like Caleb Williams can be that kind of eraser. He can fix a lot of the problems, and he's just able to do that. And the fact that this team, and I want to get your clarification on this, won 9 games, 1 offensive turnover, 1 interception by Caleb Williams, a bad decision. They are not coming close to putting the ball on the ground, turning the ball over. Like, this isn't like they're living dangerously and they're just not turning the ball over. It doesn't even look like there's opportunities for turnovers to happen. They take care of the ball extremely well. I asked Lincoln Riley about it last week, and I felt like he didn't want to talk about it because it was like talking about a no-hitter or something. And in this game, I think they got credited with the turnover because they gave up an onside kick, which I think is a team turnover, which sucks because that like doubled their turnover. But that's still 1 offensive turnover of the year. I hate that's called a turnover. Like, it's not an offensive play or anything. But that's amazing to me. So not just how good Caleb Williams is playing, but he's running the show. He's the point guard of this offense, and they're not turning the ball over. And a lot of that has to be because of what he's doing. He's putting everyone in a good position where they're going to make the play, or and the defense isn't going to.
I don't know if the clarification you want on that is that, it's weird that that's considered a turnover. I didn't actually know that until Keeley, tweeted out that was in the final stats and whatnot.
I looked at the final stats as turnover, like points off turnovers, like Cal had 6. I'm like, they didn't turn the ball over. That doesn't make any sense.
So from now on, I will be referring to giveaways that USC has instead of turnovers. They have one giveaway this season because that's not a giveaway. An onside kick isn't a giveaway.
No, that's like a takeaway.
The offense did not give away the ball, so therefore it can't be a giveaway.
Or you can say offensive turnovers.
I'm not going that. It's too many words. One word, giveaway. Giveaways and takeaways. USC's crushing it in takeaways this season, and they only have one giveaway. So
yeah, I mean, they definitely slowed down on the takeaways, but they're still slowly chipping away. Even when but USC's offense, I mean, you're not seeing them come close. Like the ball's not on the turf all the time. Like it's pretty amazing what they're able to do, and see if they can keep it going. But but coming back to Caleb Williams, he's just a special talent at the quarterback spot, and he's a big reason, in my opinion, why this team's 8-1.
I think he's the only reason they're 8-1, and they might have 6 or 7 wins without Caleb Williams.
Yeah, I said on this, I think they would probably be 6-3 without him.
I think that's fair.
Whether it's Miller Moss was in there or Jackson Dart had stayed or something like that, I think he's just creating some special plays in there. And we're seeing him rip it a little bit more. Like that throw to Terrell Bynum, I didn't really notice it at the time on the field, but then when I rewatched it, like there was a linebacker coming one way underneath. There was the defender over the top coming the other direction, and he just rips it in there. That's
like traffic going this way. It's like, phew, right in.
And that's one of those like, no, okay, if you can do it.
No, yes.
If you're not necessarily that much on the sideline, but he has that confidence, and that was something we didn't necessarily see him earlier in the season. Like he was only throwing to the guys that were wide open. A lot of guys were wide open with Lincoln Riley's scheme,
right?
But and whether that's because the receivers he has on the field right now and they're defended a little bit closer or whatever it may be, it feels like he's even gained more confidence. I think that's more of the case than the receiver part. He's gained more confidence to, let me let it rip and not be worried about a turnover or anything. And whether it be zone defenses, he's eating those up. And I know that's something that was a little bit of a knock on him last year at Oklahoma. And, Oklahoma fans, when he transferred here, were like, well, good luck when he faces drop 8. You'll see. You can drop 8. You can drop 4. You might need to drop 14.
They do. You have a better shot.
And maybe you'll have a chance to slow him down. But then you better at least rush. If you're dropping 14, you better rush 6 because he's going to make at least 3 guys miss. That's what it feels like right now. It feels like you can put 20 defenders on the field and he'll still make plays because he's so difficult to get down in the backfield. So he keeps plays alive. And then, he's always got his eyes down the field. He has missed some receivers at times this season, and maybe that's the one knock on him. Every quarterback misses receivers. Just that's the way it works. You can't see everything, especially when you're going through progressions. What you see as a fan, you may be like, that guy's wide open. Well, he's looking on the other side of the field because that's where he's supposed to start. But he's made that may be the one knock on him. But other than that, there's nothing you can really say negative about the way he's playing. He is just playing phenomenal right now. And if the defense had the caliber of athletes and playmakers that the offense does, if they were on the same level as the offense, it would be no doubt that everyone would be talking about him as the Heisman frontrunner.
Yeah.
There would be no question right now because he would be putting up the similar numbers that, it's similar to what C.J. Stroud was doing pretty much before this weekend. It's like he's just carving people up and they're dominating everybody, and that's what you would be seeing from USC right now is Caleb Williams is carving people up and they're not dominating because of the defense right now.
Yeah.
But he is doing his part for sure, and that's what it's going to be really fun when they play UCLA, and not necessarily for USC fans, maybe not for UCLA fans. As the game progresses and everyone's, grabbing the Tums and the Rolaids.
Who's going to get stops? Yeah, I don't know.
But that game might be the 65-63 UCLA-Washington State game all over. I don't know who gets a stop first.
Yeah. When you think that, though, that's when it's like a 28-27.
That's when
what happened?
Suddenly it gets sloppy and there's turnovers or whatever it may be.
Defenses play well. Who knows? Yeah, but that's definitely going to be fun. And I think for the USC fans that are all doom and gloom about what's going to are they going to have a hard time stopping UCLA? Probably. I would think so. But you have Caleb Williams in this offense. It's going to give you a puncher's chance every single time. If you barely beat Cal, it's going to look bad. But you could do the exact same thing to a way better UCLA team. It could be the exact same sort of thing.
True.
And you can still win because you got like Caleb Williams like making plays like that. So
And they weren't even great against Cal. Like the offense they weren't very good in the first half.
they weren't very good, and they
okay.
scored 41 points. It's like
They were okay in the first half.
Yeah.
And they were up 21-7 going or 20-7 going into the half.
Yeah.
Like if you can put up 20 points in a half when you're not that good, that's saying something. And that's primarily, a lot of credit goes to Lincoln Riley and his play design as well. But then the secondary is Caleb Williams. I don't know which one you would rate higher there, but both of them have been phenomenal on their side of the ball.
Yep.
Gordon said Caleb made some Pat Mahomes throws, and I never want to compare someone to someone that great, but there were times out there when he was slinging the ball sidearm that he looked like Patrick Mahomes, and I thought it was it's crazy that he can be so efficient and not put the ball in harm's way while also being comfortable doing a double spin move and not taking a sack, or throwing the ball sidearm in the red zone, not throwing it even close to the defender, or calling Michael Jackson back to him and throwing it low on the sideline. I don't think there's a single thing he can't do on the football field, and I think Shotgun's right that the story would be Caleb Williams across the national media if the defense was a little bit better and it wasn't a close game, because he's really doing everything right, and it's not his fault that he's not getting talked about enough.
His instincts are great. You see, he hit the spin button a couple times on some plays. He's just like,
I just wanted that one to be completed so that it would actually be on the highlight package.
Yeah.
Right. It's just sort of like the way he gets away from stuff. You're like, what? Like, how is that possible? And it's the third week in a row you had a different offensive line in front of him. Different starting group. He's a special talent, and he's coming back. So enjoy. I know USC fans, you want to complain about stuff or whatever. Just kind of like still in the shell shock mode from the years of the Helton era and stuff. But try to enjoy the special talent that is Caleb Williams. Like, with his top two dudes out, the top two receivers, the Biletnikoff Award winner, and his number one guy.
Even more important than that, not having his left tackle.
Yeah.
Because that's where a lot of the pressure was coming from on that left side with Mason Murphy. And it was interesting that USC made a decision. I thought Cortland Ford played pretty well last week when he came in for Bobby Haskins. And I believe that Bobby Haskins is injured, even though he did dress. I don't think you would suddenly just throw Mason Murphy in there and say, hey, you're starting a left tackle now off of one game that you started right tackle against Arizona. Because I thought he looked good against Arizona and not as good against Cal, but I think that's the difference in the defensive fronts that you're facing, Arizona versus Cal. But I think that when your blind side is not being protected, that makes it that much more challenging as a quarterback. Can you feel the heat? Do you hear those footsteps behind you, because that your starter's not in there, so it's in the back of your head that whole time, and it didn't matter. He's still just making play after play after play.
Shotgun, I have a question for you, because I think you watch this a lot closer.
The answer is 3.14. That's pi.
Oh, yeah, there you go. So I see a lot of people in the chat, and there's these people every single week saying fire Alex Grinch or saying negative things about Alex Grinch, and it's been growing with each week. USC doesn't allow 500 yards this week as it did the last two contests, but still 469 yards allowed. I think the last three quarterbacks USC has faced, they've all had their best performances of the year against USC. What part of this do you think is Alex Grinch, and what part do you think is more execution from the USC players and the actual talent on the field?
I think a huge part of it is execution. I think that it's not like Alex Grinch is just set in his ways and he's doing one defense and that's it. And, hey, they're beating that defense and he has no answers for it. The issues, they do have some talent, but they don't have the depth of talent. So when someone's struggling, can you throw somebody else in there? And I asked Alex Grinch about this because they did. They made some substitutions in that game. Jacoby Covington came in the game after Sierra Wright got beat on that long pass down the left sideline in front of the student section. Latrell McCutcheon came in after Jalen Smith gave up that contested catch. I think it was a slot fade, but he also got beat on the first drive on one. So after those guys got beat a couple times, they made changes.
Yeah.
And they've made changes at the rush end. Tried some different. Those feel like more like trying something, whereas these were like, we're getting you out because you're not making plays.
You screwed up, yeah.
And I asked kind of Alex Grinch about that. Hey, is there a potential shakeup? Could you see more guys the starting lineup change again? We saw Bryson Shaw take over at the primary safety spot instead of Max Williams, who played the dime spot. Those guys basically flipped their roles. And so instead of Max being the starter, Bryson Shaw was a starter. And he said, we can do that at certain positions, which tells me we don't have the coach speak. To cut through the coach speak is we don't have enough talent at every other position to feel like we can make those changes. So whether that's inside linebacker or whether that's somewhere on the defensive line or one of the safeties, like they don't feel like they have enough talent on the two deep to be like, all right, this guy's not making plays tonight. We're getting him out. And maybe he makes the ground back up during the week, has a really good week of practice. We'll put him back in. Sometimes guys just have an off day. 18 to 22-year-olds, as I always say, maybe their girlfriend broke up with them. They stayed up all week because of exams, whatever it may be, and they're just having an off night. Grandma just passed away, or mom didn't want to come to the game. She's mad at me, and whatever. You're thinking about something else. You have a bad game. Get somebody out. They don't feel like they can do that. And it kind of is like the Clancy Pendergast, was it 2012, 2013, Ed Orgeron year where
Stanford
notoriously played 11 players against Stanford on defense because Leonard Williams is not coming out of the game if we don't have to take him out of the game type of thing, because they didn't have anywhere close to being close to Leonard Williams. And anyone else on that defense, they felt like they had to play their starters because those are the only guys they could trust, and that's a big part of it too, is trust. It's all defense coordinators is who can I trust to do their assignment. And then, once you do your assignment, okay, they complete a 5-yard pass. You make the tackle then.
Yeah.
And those are the things that – and the last 2 games I think you can really point at and say, Alex Grinch can't make them tackle. And you can blame a defensive staff for, hey, they're not tackling well enough. But when they tackled well for the first 6 games of the season, they give up 44 missed tackles in the first 6 games, so 7.3 average. And then suddenly they're giving up 18 or 19 per game and 2 games in a row. Like, do you then suddenly be like, well, the defense, they don't know how to teach them to tackle, or the inside linebackers are hurt. Maybe the next guy that's coming in is not making the tackle. Shane Lee is playing with a cast and he has 5 missed tackles. He's never had that many in his life. He had 9 in his career in 4 years or 3 years of football, or 3.5 years at that point. So you look at those, and the injuries are definitely playing a part in it. So it is a combination. You can't fire Grinch after 1 year and the defense not being great right now, because they don't have the talent that they could potentially have. And if he has the talent, then I think the defense definitely can work. He obviously knows what he's talking about. He's trying to put guys in the right position, and it's just not working right now. But if they make a couple more plays, then suddenly things don't look quite as bad. You can give a bunch of yards, but suddenly you don't give up many points, and people are right back in the favor of Alex Grinch is doing all right.
Yeah.
Ryan, you mentioned too complementary football. I think one thing that you have to lay out for defenses like this that are paired with such an efficient offense is the defense is out on the field for so long, and I think that's something that people have asked questions about. Should the offense try and slow down a bit to make it so the defense isn't on the field? And Ryan, you said last week, you don't want them to slow down because why mess up a good offense? But at the same time, USC, after the first quarter where they held the ball for 9 minutes and 55 seconds, held it for 5 minutes and 13 seconds in the second quarter, 6 minutes and 55 seconds in the third, and 6 minutes and 1 second in the fourth quarter. And just because the offense is scoring so quick, the defense immediately going back out there, they're on the field for so many plays. I don't know if that's a discussion we still want to have, considering we see it, another week where USC puts up 41 and the defense kind of crumbles on the back end. But I think that's something that needs to be pointed out as well.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, USC wasn't very efficient, though, in this game with like 41% or whatever on third down. So I think that was part of it, too. That Cal was not coming off the field as much, and USC was. I don't think it was just because USC was scoring quickly. I thought they could have run the ball more. It's a good Cal defensive front, though, and I think that, Lincoln Riley's looking at that and like, hey, we're going to have some opportunities to throw the ball and maybe some of the shorter stuff or whatever with this aggressive Cal front. And they kind of shot away from the run. I would have liked to see them run the ball more, but I don't want you screwing up. You got a masterpiece going. You don't want to screw it up, Like, you ever have do you ever have Legos when you were a kid? And like you had like the big castle? No. You never had Legos? Oh my God, that explains a whole lot. You got to have Legos.
Sports stuff.
Can you make the analogy food?
I already did a food analogy. You have this I have this castle. It's awesome. It's all beautiful and everything. And there's but I have this other one over here. It's like a hospital. I want to make it cool, but I lost some of the pieces. The dog ate some of them. And I'm not going to take a whole bunch of pieces out of the castle to try to make the hospital better and just make it it's putting lipstick on a pig over here and screw up my beautiful castle. You have this amazing offense. Do not screw it up. We're doing it'll be fine. The offense scored 41 points. They look clunky and they're scoring 41 points. So I'm not going to take away from the offense to try to make things better on the defense. Can they mix in some more run stuff? Yeah, that's fine. But I don't think that they were going a million miles an hour, and that's why the defense was on the field too long. If that's the thing, maybe. But I don't think that's what they're doing.
It's not like USC is running tempo. They very rarely are actually running tempo. They get to the line, they set, they look, Caleb's checking with Lincoln Riley. He's getting a thumbs up. All right, now he's making different calls at the line of scrimmage. It's not like it's a rush up there. It's not the blur offense of Chip Kelly or anything like that. On the season, it's basically 30 minutes to 30 minutes. I think USC leads time of possession for the season 30-13 to 29-47. So it's not like there's a big discrepancy there. USC's philosophy is, okay, we'll take the air out of the ball a little bit in the second half. We're ahead, but you got to be able to pick up first downs, and they weren't consistently doing that last night. And in the second half, when the time of possession flipped, is okay. Suddenly they're giving up those third downs and allowing those Cal drives to keep going. That was the thing. It's not like Cal was getting when the time of possession switches for USC is like, okay, they're running so efficiently, they're getting the first down on first down. And getting a new set of downs, whereas Cal, it's taking them 3 downs every single time. Yeah. So then they get more. So that adds up a little bit. But the key there is not to do anything to the offense. It's to get off the field on third down, especially when it's 3rd and 7 or 3rd and long. You got to be able to get off the field, and that's where it's got to be the complementary, where you get the pass rush and you get the secondary helping out at the same time.
Yeah, I feel like there's a couple players that we should shout out before heading on to live calls and comments.
Yes.
You had 2 wide receivers who stepped up. Michael Jackson III with another great game for USC. A bunch through the air, 2 touchdowns through the air, and also a nice rush that he could have had a 3rd touchdown on, I think, if he followed Caleb Williams' block. You had Tahj Washington, again, over 100 yards, added a touchdown on his own. And on the defensive side, Kalen Bullock with the INT. He did have some poor plays after that, but still a big momentum shift for the Trojans. And then also Tuli Tuipulotu back in the national lead for sacks with 9.5. He had 2 last night. I think he likes playing in the Coliseum a little bit more than on the road.
Yeah, his last one was at Washington State in the Coliseum like a month ago. So
last three.
Last 3. Impressive. Yeah, but for Tahj Washington, he's really stepped up. You go from the number 3 guy to the feature wide receiver, Michael Jackson. I mean, that one play was a 3rd and 6, 7, something like that, and it was a little screen pass that looked like was going to get blown up, and not only does he avoid the tackler and avoid the defender and make the guy miss and pick up the first down, he runs it all the way in for a touchdown. So that was a huge play where it looked like it's another one they're not going to convert, and he converted basically on his own and then scored a touchdown too. So.
He made one guy miss, and then give credit to the offensive lineman who I can't think of who it is off the top of my head. I think it was Brett Nealon, but not sure. That got out in front and got the block on the safety, and then it was gone. It was gone. He only had to make one guy miss. And that's the thing with this offense is that especially against teams like Cal or Colorado or any inferior team, UCLA's defense, anyone that doesn't have an elite defense, is you can go sideline to sideline and trust that Jordan Addison, Michael Jackson, Tahj Washington, Mario Williams, even Kyle Ford, Brendan Wright, they're going to make the first guy miss. The smaller guys are going to juke the guy. The bigger guys are just going to run through an arm tackle, and they're going to make the first guy miss, and then you're going to get yardage off of that. It's similar like Drake London's not the guy with the most jukes, but they would throw the ball out to him on screens because he's going to make that first guy miss almost every time, one way or another, where he has a spin move or whatever, and then he's going to pick up 7 yards if they're going to play off, and then you force the defense to come up, and then you can do a bunch of different things. But that's what this offense is predicated on, is like, well, let's get our playmakers in space and let them go to work. And that's, Michael Jackson is showing that, hey, I can be a playmaker too. And that's something where, when you see these other receivers coming in, you can be like, ooh, do they like me? Am I going to get my opportunity, especially in the spring when he's kind of banged up? Do I hit the transfer portal and look for another opportunity? Stuck around and has made it work. And, even though at the beginning of the season he wasn't getting a run, Tahj Washington was still getting run.
Yeah.
Michael Jackson was not. Got his opportunity, and now he's made the most of it. So even when Jordan Addison and Mario Williams come back, he's still going to be getting some reps.
He will.
Whereas he didn't get any reps until basically Jordan Addison went down. Maybe a handful in the blowout against Rice, but off the top of my head, he didn't have any catches. So you're going to see him back in the rotation. That's the thing. When you get an opportunity, you got to make the most of it, and he's definitely done that. But that's what this offense does. It gives guys an opportunity to make some plays, and when they do, suddenly. You just got to make one guy miss, and you get one block, and suddenly, whoop, you go.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, I think you talk about Tahj Washington being maybe 3rd on the depth chart. What was Michael Jackson, 7th? I mean, I think USC's got just an embarrassment of riches at the wide receiver position that they can cycle in so many different players. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Thule had a fantastic game, 2 sacks, 2.5 tackles for loss. Kalen Bullock with the INT. There were a couple of miscommunication plays, and there were some pass interferences where I feel like this is the first show that they were legit pass interferences. There weren't any Pac-12 refs messing up in this game. The clock operators were fine. This is, I think, the first time we can come on the show and say, yeah, I think the Pac-12 refs did a good job today.
I couldn't tell from the press box, but it looked like they were all plays on the ball, but I guess there was like a hand behind and stuff too. So
the only one that most of the ones I saw, yes, they were calling the wrap, which sometimes you get away with that. As long as you don't turn the shoulders or turn the hips of the receiver, and referees let you get away. Technically, it is supposed to be a pass interference. The only one I wasn't sure about, I don't know if you guys saw the replay because I haven't seen that particular play, was the one in the end zone with Caleb Bullock.
It looked like a trip maybe or something.
Yeah, I know the receiver went up and spun, and then I kind of lost sight of him. So I don't know if he fell on his own or what it was. Kalen Bullock was not happy about it, I can tell you that.
No.
He was very upset about that one in particular, and there was one other one. I think he was called for 3 of them maybe. So, that's the thing is if you see it and the referee tells one of the DBs, yeah, you're getting called for this, you got to make that adjustment in game.
Yeah.
If they're going to call the wrap every time, then, and that's what it was pretty much each of those times.
Yeah, all right. We've got a couple live callers in the queue.
Let's get it.
We'll start with Curtis from Moreno Valley.
Curtis.
Hi, Curtis. You're on Tunnel Vision.
Hey, fellas. I want to talk about what we know we're going to go up against in the later part of the season. Mobile quarterbacks, guys that can take off with their legs and hurt you. I say we spy them with a safety that can match their size and speed and athletic ability. Shotgun, who do you think we should spy? Even if we're in man coverage, if we're blitzing, if we're in zone, we should still have that spy on the DTRs of the world. What do you guys think? Thanks, Curtis.
What's up, Curtis? Pretty much just DTR is like the dynamic quarterback left on the
roster. If you end up playing Cameron Rising or Bo Nix against the Pac-12
but in the regular
championship.
season, like Colorado is like, I was watching.
Does Colorado even have? Do they run an offense that has a quarterback?
JT Shroud, I was watching him yesterday. He would just throw like just BBs at like in the general area of a receiver, and sometimes it's like flying over here. It's like it was insane, like no touch whatsoever.
They do say he has really strong arm strength.
He doesn't real start, but it's just like I'd be throwing a jack, and you're like, oh, it might go over there. It was just crazy. I'm like, what are you doing, dude? Like it was just bad.
I thought that they ran the triple wing still.
No, they do not. But you don't have to worry about Colorado next week. Like there's no spy on JT Shroud. And then DTR obviously super dynamic quarterback playing out of his mind. That's the one you got to worry about. I haven't watched Notre Dame lately to see what's going on there, but there's more of a
Tyler Buckner is out for the season, is all I know. So, he was a more mobile option.
But who would you spy on DTR? Because they had Eric Gentry was used as a spy before a lot of times.
It's hard to spy with your middle linebacker, and I actually learned a little bit about this. I listened to Sua or one of the defenders on a different show. Just because you want to keep those guys, they're the center of your defense. You don't want them, you want to be able to use them in different ways. So maybe it's an Eric Gentry type, but if you're using a safety as Curtis is suggesting, who would you want to put then? Max Williams has the knowledge and he's a sure tackler. Kalen Bullock is the guy you would love to have there, but you don't want to take away your over the top, as your center fielder. So if you can just clone Kalen Bullock,
a couple of them.
And put him, in there, then you could do that. If you're bringing someone off the bench or something, you could look at, Chris Thompson. But he was injured this past game. Former safety who plays linebacker now. I thought he'd be a good fit in the dime defense, but unfortunately he got banged up, I guess, against Arizona and on special teams, and he did not dress for this past game. So there's not a great. Just a perfect person to go do it. He's and you don't always want to have the same person. You want to mix and match so the quarterback doesn't know, he's looking and he thinks someone's in zone coverage, but they're really focused on the quarterback the entire time. So he thinks he can take off and that guy's there waiting on him or whatever it may be in that regard. And you don't always want to use a spy because then you're playing 10 on 10 basically. And, the less numbers there are, the easier it is for the offense. That's why 7-on-7 football it's much easier for the offense to
Sure.
play 7-on-7. So it's something where you got to mix it up. You got to mix and match. But I think the biggest thing is you can't have any of the other inside linebackers try to do it.
No.
Tuasi Namora, Shane Lee, like that's not their strength.
You're just taking someone out of the play, basically, yeah.
Yeah, because you need someone who's able to come downhill and be able to then adjust on the fly. And those guys are come downhill between the line of scrimmage, let me hit my gap, let me hit the spot where I'm supposed to be and destroy whatever's there.
Yeah.
Versus being out in the field, having to dance with somebody or anything like that out in the open field. That's just not their strength, so I don't think that's the persons that you would want to do with it ideally. So there are some options. You could even bring in someone like Anthony Beavers off the bench. I like the type of player, if you're thinking about a safety, is someone that has the size to play linebacker at the same time, or has the instincts to play linebacker, so that you can bring them up close to the line of scrimmage, so you're not having to drop them from deep and bring them up to the linebacker depth on the snap or something like that, and you can kind of move them around in different ways around the linebacker depth.
I like the Whitney Houston reference. You want to dance with somebody. Nice.
Always.
Okay.
Well, I think the problem, too, with a team like UCLA, where, yes, DTR is a very mobile quarterback, but they run the ball very well with Zach Charbonnet.
Mm-hmm.
You don't always want to have a safety in the box because an offensive lineman gets to the second level, and Max Williams isn't going to get off the block the same way that Shane Lee might be able to, or Eric Gentry even. So I think that's sometimes tough to use a safety. It might make more sense against a team like Arizona, who doesn't run the ball quite as well as UCLA, but they're kind of a multifaceted offense that will definitely cause problems for USC, and we'll see what happens when they get there. I think if USC was going to use a safety, it's good now that I think they've found three that they want to play in Max Williams, Kalen Bullock, and now Bryson Shaw, who I've been impressed with over the last couple of weeks. So they might have one more safety at their disposal, which I think we would all agree they clearly don't have at the linebacker position. Is a wealth of people that they can use in multiple different ways. Let's go to Kevin from San Jose to talk about Cortland Ford and Mason Murphy. Hi, you're on Tunnel Vision.
Hey guys, Ryan, my analogy is it's like when someone says they have Halloween candy, but it turns out it's candy corn. That's how I felt about the game.
That's for me. I love candy corn.
I like it. Great analogy.
My question is, do you think that Mason Murphy being chosen over Cortland Ford is more speaking about how much they value Mason Murphy, or how Cortland Ford either is health-wise or development-wise?
Probably a little of both. We've heard a lot of glowing things about Mason Murphy. Just even talking to the players, like when I talked to Jonah Monheim last week, he had said like Justin Dietich took himself out of his normal weightlifting routine to go work out with Mason Murphy to bring him along. So it just kind of told you, like, when he came in, a lot of people were like, oh, that guy's going to be good. For whatever reason, that's what they saw in him. So I feel like he was going to be groomed to be someone that's good. So I think it's a kind of a combination. I don't know if Cortland Ford's completely healthy. He did come in late in the Arizona game, but he seemed fine to me. I think they can run the ball really well when he's in the game. But I think they really do like Mason Murphy, and that's probably a lot of why this is happening.
Yeah, and Mason Murphy is a guy that is only going – he's probably one of a handful of players on the team that the more reps you can get is the betterment for the team, because he is raw. He does not play football for very long. He started playing football, I believe, his freshman or sophomore year of high school, and then loses the 2020 season basically because of the pandemic. So he just doesn't have a ton of reps. So any extra reps you can get him, which is why – in the Arizona game, now granted he was starting this game, but the Cal game, the Fresno States of the world, like if you can pound somebody and be up by 3 scores, then Mason Murphy in that Fresno State game, he gets those extra reps.
Yep.
And so that it accelerates his development. So I think that him getting these reps is a positive for USC down the road, but it tells you that, they think that there's definitely something there, that there's talent there. And he was the number 1 rated tackle in California, his recruiting class season. So, I think that they definitely have confidence in Mason Murphy and want to get him those opportunities. But it is a little bit unsettling, with seeing Cortland Ford and seeing what he potentially can do, that they have, that they don't see the same thing in him.
Yeah.
So like Ryan said, I think it's a combination of both.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, and I agree with you, Ryan. I think that they've been able to run the ball well with Cortland Ford, so maybe it's a health issue, but I also think they're very high on Mason Murphy. You hear all the rave reviews about him this week from Justin Dedich and Jonah Monheim and all the other offensive linemen, and just even Lincoln Riley saying how much they prioritize making sure that Mason would be ready to go, probably not only for this season, but also going forward, because I think they think he's a big part of the Trojan offensive line moving forward. We got one more caller. We'll go to Dave from Iowa. Hi, Dave. You're on Tunnel Vision.
Hi, guys. Great to be back again. In terms of the win, a win's a win, but, kind of disappointing in a couple areas. I don't know if you guys have noticed over the past decade, but the way the game is called has changed. 10, 15 years ago, season-wise, a team would go 1 for 3 on fourth downs. Now, teams are averaging to go 10 to 15 times. Everyone's getting more aggressive, right? Same can be said now with onside kicks. USC this weekend and last weekend, Oregon and the Oregon UCLA game, and it wasn't on purpose an onside kick, but I believe there's another onside kick this past weekend. It might have been Mississippi State. I could be wrong there. But so my question is, take it or leave it. No matter how this season ends, Lincoln Riley doesn't hire a special teams coach. What are your thoughts?
I'm leaving it just from his comments.
Yeah, he doesn't sound like he wants that. But I mean, there's some onside kicks, but they're still a very low percentage play. It's a desperation thing usually at the end. But if you could sneak one in because you see something on film, and I thought that Oregon did a really nice job against UCLA. That USC's was okay. That didn't work. Obviously, Cal snuck one in there, and they did a good job. If you can do a sneak attack onside kick, I think it's good. But it's still going to be. I don't think that's the reason why you're going to hire a special teams coordinator or not. It's just not his philosophy to. But the way the special teams have been playing, I think it's hurting. I think it's hurting USC on that part of the ball. I mean, some of the stuff is simple, just like don't return it, just fair catch it. You'd be better off.
I say return it.
They're not getting the 25.
USC averaged 16.5 yards a kick return yesterday night.
I'm going to get every time the ball is in Malik Brown's hands, I want him to return the ball.
All right.
He will eventually make something special happen.
When's the last time USC returned a kickoff or a punt for a touchdown? Do you remember? It's been years.
Off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Can't be all the way back to a Dory, but that's the first thing that comes to my mind.
I always go back to this one, but I remember the Gary Bryant against UCLA a couple years ago. It wasn't a touchdown, but that was a game that, it seemed like after UCLA scored that USC was going to lose.
That changed the game.
I was kind of watching it, and I'm like, Gary Bryant, you probably shouldn't return this. I was like, oh, well, good decision.
If you have elite playmakers, you got to give them opportunities. If you give up 5 yards on it,
they get better at blocking because it's not working right now.
That would help.
Yeah.
That usually is the case, and that's when you have a special teams coach. Those are things you work on, but they don't have one of those. The onside kicks, just real quick on it, because the rule changes that have happened across NFL, high school, college in the last decade, I think that's why you see the percentage on, especially in the NFL, the rules are so slanted against the recovery, just with the blocking and everything, where it used to be you went full force and you just blew everybody up, and then someone tried to come in behind to get the ball.
Yeah.
You can't do that. The ball has to touch someone before anyone
fair catch it,
before any block can be made, all those type of things. So that's why the sneak attacks are much more effective, and which is why I'm still befuddled by USC not sneak attacking the onside kick they attempted. They just lined up in it and went for it. I don't know if you noticed this. Like, Dennis Lynch turned his body and did it. It wasn't like...
Yeah, you want to do that one where you're kind of going forward and then it's just like the little drag kick.
Yeah.
I love the one where the kicker recovers it himself. That's a great one. That's really cool if you could pull that one off. But, yeah, they didn't do that.
All right, we can go to some questions now. The first one comes from Cameron on YouTube. He says, question, how crucial is it to get Goforth, Gentry, Addison, and Mario back by the Colorado game?
Not for Colorado. It's crucial for UCLA.
I think it would be great because you want to shake the rust off, especially some of those guys going on a month since they played. But crucial, no.
Riley said he's not holding anybody out, by the way. So I don't know if you believe him. I don't believe anything really he's saying with injuries.
Anything that's said with injuries, I'm not believing.
But
grain of salt.
USC is going to beat Colorado with those guys out. But it would be nice to get them back a little bit. Riley did mention a pitch count potentially like for Addison, so maybe you see him on a pitch count, which would be good just to get him some like you said, get the rust off. But you need them full strength for UCLA if you can get them.
Yeah, we had a question from Breakaway as well. It said, which of the injured starters is closest to coming back, in your opinion? I would say Jordan Addison, because he did warm up. And Riley said, later in the week they didn't think that he was going to be able to play, but they wanted him to go through the warm-ups basically and kind of to see, if they could get him on a pitch count or anything like that. So that's something to keep an eye on going forward with him, and just because he was the one that was actually able to do some warm-ups yesterday when none of the other injured guys did anything.
But keep in mind, this past week he said that he expects a couple of those guys to be back, and they weren't back. So like it's just
none of them were.
I guess Vorhees was back.
None of them were long-term injuries, right?
Yeah.
No long-term concerns. It depends.
Just
on
don't listen to what he says about it.
It depends
he
on
doesn't
what
want
your
to talk about them.
definition of long-term is. I mean, if you don't think that three weeks is long-term, then it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I think
No long-term concerns for their football careers.
Yeah, maybe that's what he means.
Or for their future health after their football careers
Right.
end. That's what he meant.
I think that you do want to get some of them back because you don't want some of their first snaps to come against UCLA in a game where we just mentioned if you got to score on offense pretty much every possession to make up for the lack of defense, you're going to want Jordan Addison to have played a couple of snaps against Colorado. Same with Mario Williams and others. A question from Herman on YouTube. What are your thoughts on Caleb Williams being a possible Heisman finalist? Mentions USC's remaining schedule, and I know that we've talked about this a little bit, but what are your guys' kind of thoughts on that right now?
Yeah, I think he's got a good shot. He's still up there with the odds, like the Vegas odds kind of thing. I believe so. I haven't looked lately.
They didn't put him out yet this week. I believe they come out tomorrow morning. I'll get those emailed to me. But he was third last week, and he was a little bit down, and something like 12-1 or something from where he had been earlier in the season. But Hendon Hooker and C.J. Stroud were the two guys in front of him, and he had better days than both those guys yesterday.
And what is it, 27-1 touchdown interception ratio?
28-1.
28-1. I mean, that's pretty ridiculous.
Plus four.
Yeah, 4.
So he has like a stat padding game against Colorado, and then 2 marquee games, UCLA and Notre Dame. So like you win those, or you have a really good game in those, you build some momentum. Like Carson Palmer won the Heisman because of the Notre Dame game at the end of the season, and that's same sort of opportunity. I don't know if he's going to be able to win the Heisman. Maybe they go on some crazy run. But
the question was about him being a finalist.
I think he's got a decent shot of being in New York for sure.
I think, I mean,
he'll be right now. My guess is he'll be top 5 in voting.
yeah.
Now, does that get you to New York? You don't know, because it could be 3, 4, or 5.
It depends. Just like if there's like 3 clear number 1, 2, 3, then those guys go. But I think he's got a decent shot.
The question is, are you coming to visit? I'll be in New York for.
I'll go to this. I'll go to New York.
All right,
for this,
we're both going to New York.
I'm a voter, man. I want to go. So like.
Well, I'm right down the street, so.
Perfect.
We're hanging out in New York in December.
Yes.
I'll stow away in your luggage and join you guys in New York. We've got a couple more questions. So another question, Herman asked another one. Can kickoff receiving team waive for a fair catch? And I know, Shadi, you said that you want them to take the ball out. Ryan, I know you've also talked about you want a touchback. Do you think it's worth it for the short pooch kicks where they're catching at the 5-yard line for them to just fair catch it?
I like it. I mean, unless you've shown that you can do something better with it, you can fair catch it. I would rather just see him fair catch. There's a funny meme that goes around. The meme with the guy's with his girlfriend and he's looking at the other girl with like the googly eyes, and it's the like USC kickoff returners is the guy, and like fair catch is the girlfriend, and then run it out is the other girl, and it's like USC returners like always looking to run it out, and it never does anything good. So I don't know, but I love when that meme kind of comes around.
Yeah, another question from Alan. Take it or leave it, USC would not make a bowl game this year without Caleb and Tuli Tuipulotu.
Okay, take them both out. No, they'd make a bowl game. Like, this is a well-coached team, but to be 8-1, you need Caleb. They're making a bowl without those guys.
Let's just take the best offensive player and best defensive player off every team and see what happens. These are the hypothetical questions that I'm not a fan of, guys.
All right,
fan of hypotheticals.
We've got a non-hypothetical question then. And Shotgun, you can start on this one from Kylie from YouTube. How does USC's performance, coupled with the SEC banging up on one another, help recruiting for USC?
And Kylie also asked, with USC's rise, coupled with the move to the Big Ten and Alabama's decline, do we anticipate more undecided top recruits to think hard about USC? I think recruits are going to think hard about USC regardless, because it's a program on the rise. They're good, I believe in what Lincoln Riley's doing at USC, that they're going to be consistently good, and that's going to attract recruits. What's happening in the SEC this single season, does that help USC? Not necessarily. Some of you have to win to get those top 5-star guys in a single season, But there was another question about recruiting. It was something, does it help or hurt with the way the defense is playing? And as long as you're winning, I don't think it hurts you, because then you say, man, you see, we're winning, but if we just had you at this position, how much better would our defense be, and we could potentially be elite. Whereas if you're losing, it makes it much harder to sell that. So I think recruiting is doing fine right now and will continue to do well, because when you're winning, people want to be a part of a winning program.
Recruits, the fans need to understand this. Like, recruits do not watch the game like you do. They're not following Alex Grinch is terrible, he needs to do this, or I can't believe they missed an extra point. Like, recruits barely know who won. Like, they're not following this. Most of them, they're not following this like you as a diehard USC fan. Like, just don't look. You can't look at it from that prism. Like, that's what their point of view is. That is not their point of view. There was a ton of recruits behind me coming off the field in that game, and that's but they were with their families and stuff when we were ready to come off the field afterwards. And yeah, I don't think they were everyone was jumping around all happy and everything, but they're at the Coliseum, they're on the field, they're having a good time. They're you see the moms taking selfies and all this kind of stuff. They're not concerned about all the stuff that you're concerned about. Well, if they do this if they play this way against UCLA, Zach Charbonnet is going to run for 1 million yards. They're not thinking like that. That's just not in a recruit's mindset. So it just put yourself in a different point of view. These are high school kids that are looking to go to school somewhere, and where's going to be a cool opportunity.
What's fun? Where's the pageantry? Where's everyone having a good time? It's not all X's and O's, especially with 17-year-olds.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think you're right. They'll see 8-1, and they're not always going to be looking at, well, you didn't really blow out Cal. That's not exactly how the recruits watch the game.
You had to justify the hype. There was a lot of hype, and you got some good recruits like a Ralen Brown, guys like that, on the hype of Lincoln Riley coming to USC. But you also needed some tangible results. You opened you had these awesome recipes. You're like, this is amazing, but you haven't eaten any food yet. Now he's cooking these meals, and you're like, well, that's pretty good, And so now you have these awesome meals to serve to your guests. And everyone's like, okay, I recommend this restaurant. This is really good food.
And Ryan, when's signing day?
December.
December. So when you get to December, how many people are looking back at how an October game played out? They look at, was it a W or was it an L? And Lincoln Riley mentioned this last night. He said, that you want to win games much more convincingly. He said, but at the end of the year, people look and see whether you won or lost rather than how exactly did it. Now, he said that, and the one caveat is you are potentially dealing with a committee that is going to look at those type of things and decide your fate.
Right.
So, but in general, if you win, you advance, in the eyes of the public. So, USC moves up a couple spots because they won. If they lost, like Alabama or Tennessee, they drop down. When you win, you go up. When you lose, you go down. It's the general consensus.
And we're only talking about defensive recruits. If you're an offensive recruit, what more do you want than this USC offense that's producing with a 7th-string wide receiver? If you think you're a 2-star to a 5-star wide receiver, you're looking at this offense and saying, I'm going to put up 7,000 yards in this offense if, Jordan Addison was doing it, and now, look, Michael Jackson's doing it too. I think if you're an offensive recruit, you want to be a part of this.
If I was an elite receiver, I would reclassify. If I was a junior right now, I'd reclassify.
I want to come in for Caleb. And if you're, fast forward to mid-December when the guys are on on TV or on their streaming channels with 3 hats in front of them, no one's going to reach for the USC hat and go, nah, here's the Oregon hat. Just USC didn't beat Cal by that much, so I'm going to go to Oregon. That's not the mindset. So just get out of the fan, super hyper affected by everything USC football does mindset. That's not the recruiting mindset.
Someone's going to do that, though, eventually, and then we're going to be kind of shocked.
Right.
They're going to say, well,
USC missed an extra point against Cal. I'm going to go to Oregon.
Did you see the onside kick decision at Arizona? I just don't know if I want to be a part of that.
There have been the thousands of recruits we've dealt with and the national recruits over the years. There have been 1 or 2 that have been I was down to these 2 schools, and whichever one, that's where I decided to go.
Right, which is
really so rare.
Gerard has a great story. Gerard Martinez, you remember Manti Te'o?
He loves the Manti Te'o.
The Manti Te'o story. He's literally on the field. He goes on an official visit to Notre Dame, November. They're playing Navy. It's snowing. Navy's beating Notre Dame. Students are throwing snowballs from the stands at the Notre Dame players while he's down there, raining snowballs down on him, and he still went to Notre Dame. So, obviously he didn't really give a crap about what happened in that game or the fact that students were throwing snowballs at their own team. So
Well, and I think you look at some certain schools around the country. Look at Miami, which has not been winning football games. They're still getting recruits, so I think it's not all in the X's and O's. And sometimes it's more about personal relationships and seeing where you fit in a certain scheme. We've only got a couple more questions. This one I think is an interesting one. Who do you think is the fastest player on the team? That comes from Andrew on YouTube.
Damani Jackson. He ran 10.
Damani, Ralen could be up
10-1
there.
something last year or whatever. 2 I don't remember this exact time, but he was the fastest in California, and it was faster than everybody else's times that are on the team right now. So Damani Jackson.
Yeah.
I think if you had to go offense, probably Jordan Addison.
I'm not making it more complicated. I'm just answering one question.
Yeah, or Ralen's up there too, I think.
All right, Ryan, maybe you can start us off with this one. Kane on YouTube asks, does Oregon lose one of their next 3 games? That's Washington, Utah, or Oregon State.
Yeah, I think they're going to lose one of them. They've been playing really, really well, but this is a tough stretch. And we know how tough it is to go into Corvallis and play. That Oregon State defense is for real. It might be the best defense in the Pac-12. Utah's a team that can come in there and win. Washington, there's potential there too. So I think between if they go through those 3 undefeated, that's going to be pretty impressive. But I think they're going to lose one of them.
All right, and another question, Shuckin. This one's for you. Walker Lamer on YouTube asks, before this ends, please talk about the upcoming USC basketball season. So, do you have any thoughts? You were at practice this week about USC basketball.
I just hope that my biggest takeaway from stopping by practice is that I hope that Vince Iwuchukwu gets cleared to play because he is an absolute monster. He's 7 foot. He has gigantic thighs, gigantic calves, and he moves around. I saw him kind of slap boxing, playing around with one of the student managers or whatever, and he just moves so gracefully. I can't wait to see that actually in action on the court because we have him listed in our database at 220 pounds, 7'1", 220 pounds. He is now 248 pounds. Now, part of that is, hey, he's not been able to do as much cardio, so he may lose a little bit. But it's good weight. It's not like he's putting on bad pounds. He has been an update on him that I put in on the Peristyle for those that are members that you would have gotten this information on Friday. But he has been able to work out with the team, doing this strength training and stuff. So that's a positive development going forward. It's step by step, baby step by baby step for him, but some positive strides there. So hopefully everything goes well for him and he can come back from the cardiac issue that he had during the summer, and can get back healthy and can get back on the court because I think he's going to be an absolute monster and a game changer for him. Other than the guy who's not playing right now, USC is going to be a 4-guard lineup. They can shoot the ball. The question is going to be what happens on a night when it's not falling. Is there going to be that night because they have 8 or 9 guys that can shoot it? It's not like they got 3 guys and, hey, if a couple guys aren't aren't shooting well, what happens? They do have some creators, and as long as they play together and create for one another, it's going to be a really fun team to watch and could really surprise some people in the Pac-12 despite kind of the lack of depth at the post position with Josh Morgan starting, Harry Henderson, Harry Hornery, Harry and the Hendersons, that's where I was going with it.
Yes.
Classic 80s movie. Harry Hornery as the backup there right now because they're a little banged up there, and Kajani Wright as well. So it's going to be interesting. It'll be fun to see them tomorrow open the season and see what they have because it's going to be a new look USC. It's going to be much closer to the Dunk City vibes that Andy Enfield had at Florida Gulf Coast, where it was 4 guards, 2-point guard lineup, where you're trying to really push the ball instead of what USC's had the last 4 or 5 years, where we're going to get the ball in Evan Mobley's hand. We're going to get it in Isaiah Mobley, Onyeka Okongwu. We're going to go through the post because these are NBA dudes, and you want to use your NBA dudes.
Yeah.
It sounds like USC's found their linebacker partner alongside Eric Gentry in Vince Iwuchukwu. If you want to have the 2 tallest linebackers in college football history, if he's actually 248 or a spy, there you go. Last question from Andrew. I wanted to end on this one. He asked, does SC have the team to win out?
Yeah, they certainly can win out. Only 3 games on the regular season. You can beat Notre Dame. Stanford beat Notre Dame. So you can definitely beat Notre Dame. Marshall beat Notre Dame. No, Notre Dame also beat Clemson. They also beat North Carolina, and they beat Syracuse. So, but you can certainly, it's not like Notre Dame's not unbeatable. Like Stanford beat them, and Stanford's god-awful. Colorado is garbage. They're just terrible. And they beat Cal, which is crazy. And then UCLA is really good, but you can win that game. I mean, that's going to be, lots of offense, a lot of fun, certainly winnable. And I think anybody in the Pac-12 championship is beatable. Now, if Oregon goes through and is just like mauling everybody in the last 3 games of their schedule, like that might be a lot tougher of a game if you're going to play Oregon in the championship game. But USC has the talent, and just with Caleb Williams, they have the talent to win all these games. So, yeah. I
think that for the Pac-12's sake, they should hope that Oregon wins out and USC wins out, because then you're going to get potentially, at worst, like number 5 versus number 6
in the championship
game, and someone's going to move into the college football playoff because you're going to have a one loss. I think that's at worst they'll be ranked at that.
Yeah.
Going into it just because of the way results happen. But yeah, USC is definitely talented enough to be able to win out. Do they have to play better on defense before those last 2 games of the regular season? Yes.
Yeah, they definitely have to play better.
I think I agree. And that Oregon matchup might be 5 versus 6 with 2 Heisman finalists, as Bo Nix is one of those guys that we thought could end up in New York, which that would be, I think, a crazy game. UCLA, if they beat USC and don't lose for the rest of the year, might end up being ranked that high, but I think you're right for the Pac-12. I think you want to have USC and Oregon. I also think it's probably the best matchup of any of the 4 teams that we think are in play for the Pac-12 title game. But we'll see. USC plays UCLA in a couple weeks. This week they play Colorado. Do you guys have any thoughts before we wrap it up and send it into this weird week where USC plays on a Friday?
Dale had a comment that I wanted to put out there.
Okay.
It's not a question. It's a comment, so I saved it for last. Dale Wise said, people always just complain. I guess they don't remember when we were perpetually, that'd be USC fans, I guess, one of the most or USC itself. I guess they don't remember when USC was perpetually one of the most penalized teams and never had any timeouts because Clay Helton couldn't manage the game.
Fair.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
People always do complain, even when you're winning, unless you're blowing out every opponent, and still then, someone will find something.
There's always going to be something, like, if you're an Alabama fan, you can complain you lost 2 games, you might not make the playoff this year. Like, there's different levels of complaining. I think Lincoln Riley's raised the bar to the point where, like, wow, this team's really good. Wait, you stuck on offense this game or defense or whatever, and you want to complain about something.
I'm from Georgia. I went back home during the bye week, hung out with some friends. Several of them are Georgia fans. Some family members, Georgia fans. There were plenty of complaints.
For the defending national
champion who were undefeated. We haven't played anybody. I don't know what's going to happen.
Beat Oregon by 7 touchdowns.
Our DBs are wide. We got McConkey, and that's it. Is our wide receiver. Like, all these things. Everyone's going to have a complaint. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
They pretty much just go and blank the number 1 ranked Tennessee Volunteers.
Yeah, it's what makes college football so great, though. There's all this subjectivity. There's always complaint. There's always this. My conference better than yours. If we played this schedule, like, there's all this talk. And that's just kind of what makes college football awesome. Sure. It's like there's a lot of it, In the NFL, there's very regimented, and you're like, we're going to play this division versus this division this year, and then you finish this high. Your schedule's this level, and there's all this crossover stuff, and the Super Bowl. It's very systematic. College football, there's just so much that you could just argue about, and that's why we love it. I think it's a big part of why we love it.
Well, yeah, I mean, the NFL, it doesn't matter whether you lose by 30 or you win by 1. It's a win's a win and a loss is a loss. And if you lose, you're picking higher in the draft.
No voters,
you're not, down
committees.
in recruiting.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we've got a lot to sort out this week. USC practices Monday and Tuesday instead of Tuesday and Wednesday. I think the Pac-12 or the college football playoff rankings again will come out at night on Tuesday. I don't know where you guys think that USC ends up. My guess is probably 8, right where they are in the AP poll. I think they move past Clemson and Alabama, but LSU makes the jump because they beat the Crimson Tide. But yeah, I would expect USC.
LSU with 2 losses, including the Florida State.
At home.
Yeah. I know. We just won.
But USC doesn't have a quality win. And that's the thing. USC, it doesn't matter where they're at right now. They could be 8, but if they go into those final 2 games and they beat a top 10 UCLA team that's top 10 in the college football playoff rankings, and then they beat Notre Dame, who's going to be in the top 15, maybe. They're at 20 right now as far as the AP poll. If you win a top 10 game and a top 15 game back-to-back going into the Pac-12 championship, suddenly you are going to jump. You will then re-jump LSU, I believe, because then you can say, well, we have a quality win. And it'd be similar to Alabama's because Alabama's going to be down around 10 at the same time.
Yeah.
So it will. I think granted, in the national scheme, Alabama versus UCLA does not look like the same, but on paper it's going to be a very similar thing. And then you're going to get some weird, terrible answer from the committee member about why they put LSU in front of USC instead of just saying,
They're
it's
in the
SEC.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Oregon State ended up losing because they had a quality win over Oregon State because there was a road win against the ranked team. They're gonna drop out because they end up losing to Washington. So
They
Washington
could still
probably.
climb back in. Washington jumped into the AP poll, so you probably see them in there.
Yeah.
So it's going to constantly be that way. But if they win out, they'll be fine. So it doesn't really matter.
And I think the difference between USC and a lot of teams, especially all the one-loss teams, is USC has one of the more quality losses. At first, it was Alabama having a very quality loss to Tennessee, and I guess this one to LSU still is a quality loss. But USC is probably the only one-loss team that I look at. It's like they lost by 2 points on the road, 1 point, on the road in a very loud environment, as opposed to Oregon, who got blown out by Georgia, or Utah even, who lost by big on the road at UCLA, and you can say the same thing about UCLA and Oregon. So I think USC has that going for them, and we'll see if they win out the rest of the way. Colorado this week, then UCLA, then Notre Dame, and we'll see where it sits from there. But that's all we've got for you guys for today's show. Thanks for tuning in to Tunnel Vision. Thank you, Shotgun, for coming out to California. I know you're going to be here for tomorrow for the basketball game. I hope you're enjoying your time in Los Angeles. But that's all we've got for you guys. Thank you for being active in the comments section as always. Leave a like on the stream, and if you're on podcasting platforms, leave a 5-star review and follow the show. That's all we've got. We'll be here on Tunnel Vision on Thursday again for USC on Friday against Colorado. That's all we've got for you guys. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you later this week.